Hi, and welcome to The Curling Show, the podcast that brings you interviews with the sport's top athletes and the people who shape the game. I'm Dean Gemmel, and this is the first half of a two-part interview with possibly the best tour curler not on tour next season, Jon Mead. Jon Mead, the first curler to make 3 appearances on The Curling Show. Thanks for the support and your time today.
Hey, I had no idea. It's quite an honor.
It is quite an honor, yes. Hey, let's start at the end, or at least with a new chapter. The news in April that I first read on George Carey's blog, curlnews.blogspot.com, that you would not be curling on tour next season, not with Jeff Stoughton or with anyone else. I think the timing of the announcement may have thrown people a little bit, since it was just about a week after the news that Ryan Fry would be replacing Gary Vandenberg. Not surprising that Gary was moving on, but, you know, there were quotes in the Winnipeg Sun from you about what Ryan might bring to the team. So what prompted the change of heart?
Well, it was never really a change of heart. It was just being sort of caught in between a rock and a hard place where, I hadn't really made up my mind one way or the other what I was going to do, and everybody on my team was quite aware of where I stood, and when Ryan started being brought into the fold as far as a conversation, he was aware going in that there was certainly a chance that I was going to decide against playing, and it's just one of those things that in a perfect world the timing is always perfect for everybody, but it doesn't work that way. Whether it's a guy that's being his position's being taken away from him and he's being moved, that timing is never good for anybody. Or Ryan's timetable and my team's timetable was different than mine, and I would have actually preferred just to get through all of the events and like the Players Championship and the Bonspiel in Victoria before I had to do anything. But to be fair to my team and the guys with their plans for the following year, I just had to make that decision a little bit quicker before the end of the season so that they could make the plans that they needed to. So that was the hand that was dealt me, and I tried to deal with it as best I could.
Was it just burnout after a season like last season?
I think there was a lot of factors, Dean. I think, to be honest, had our team not made the trials, there was a good chance that I would have made this move the year before. There's just so many things. I have a young family. We take so much time away from work and family. It puts an amazing amount of burden on my wife to do everything without having the flexibility to really make much plans for herself for a 6-month part of the year. Her job takes her away a bit, and she has some huge responsibilities in her job. So that was probably the focus of it. It was just time to get some better balance back in my life. I think at the end of the day, what I had left in me was to take one really good run at the trials, and that was the goal, and that was really what was motivating in me, and it really got the best out of me. And I never really felt burnt out, but at the end of it, when it came time to when I thought back about some of the Bonspiels over the last couple of years leading up to the trials, where I can't say that I enjoyed myself the way I used to, or the way I think you should to play on tour competitively. I think if you ask my teammates, at times I wasn't a very good teammate because I just didn't enjoy myself enough out there, be it grumpy or short-tempered or, whatever. And it's just it's time to do some different things in my life, and I don't think that I can be a part-time player and do things differently. I don't know how to play the game part-time, so I think in order to do some, have some real change in my life, I needed to make a dramatic, change, and that meant walking away from the game, and whether that's for a short time or forever remains to be seen.
It is difficult to play less than you have in the past, and probably not as well, isn't it?
Well, and I think that was a really huge key for me. I mean, when I think back to this year, and it's kind of a weird thing in that it's really that best of times, worst of times. I mean, losing the trials, was one of the toughest things to swallow because, in terms of just putting your neck on the line and everything, the difference between first and second in that event is just, it's incredible. And I've got no problem with that. I knew what it was going in, but, leading up to that, I've never worked harder. I've never done more of the right things to get prepared. And as a result, I think that for myself and for our team, we had never been better. That was as good as we had ever been, and I think that we can make the argument that for at least that week, we were as good as anybody in the game. We didn't win, but we played pretty well, and there's whatever you want to back it up against the best field you're going to put together. We held our own, and that's as good as I've ever been. The flip side to that is I don't have it in me to want or to try and put that kind of effort in anymore. So, I will play less, I will practice less, I will think less, I will, everything going into it. And so the result is going to be I'm not going to play as well. And I think that I would find that to be incredibly frustrating next year, after being at such a high level, to take a step back. And given that I just don't have that burning desire to do it, I think all that would translate into is a pretty crappy curler who wouldn't be a lot of fun to play with. So time to do something different.
Hey, in some ways, if you had won the trials, it'd probably be a decision you wouldn't have made this year, I guess, right?
No, absolutely. I mean, it changes, that changes everything to, have had the chance to go to an Olympics and represent your country, and it's a very, I would fully expect to still be curling in some manner, and there's a part of it just, ride that gravy train, right? I mean, if, I wouldn't be honest if I didn't say that would have been part of the thought process, but just different opportunities and different responsibilities and everything else that comes with it. I don't have that luxury, nor do I have that responsibility. So, I try not to spend a lot of time thinking about what might have been, and actually it's been quite easy that way. But that's just a great memory, of that week, and that's what it is. It's a memory.
As it should be. Hey, as a kid, my mom used to listen to CBC Radio in the morning all the time, and it was either 82 or 85, one of the rare times that CBC Radio felt so inclined to talk about curling, and I remember them talking to Rick Lang, and it was either 82 or 85, I can't quite remember, but they talked to him about curling, and he said, they asked him why it was so important to him, and he said, he took a year off from the game once, and he felt like a little piece of him was missing. Are you worried you're going to feel that way come October and November?
Excuse me. I don't think so. And that's probably why I haven't called it a retirement, is because I don't know for sure, and you see so many guys in all kinds of sports say, oh yeah, they're done, and they're never going to lace it up again, and then a couple months later out there playing. So, the only thing I know for sure is I'm not smart enough to know exactly where I'm headed. But, for me, I just like doing stuff. I play football in the summer with a bunch of guys, and it's not the best football in the world, that's for sure. But I get, to be honest, I would probably, if somebody said to me, what would you rather do right now? Would you rather play a curling game or do that? I'd rather do that, or maybe play, hockey badly once a week. I think for me, I'm really a process guy. I'm not a results-oriented person. Some people, they're born with this competitive fire that no matter what they do when they go out there, it's about winning. And that isn't so much me. I'm a guy that just likes to go play. And in fact, I almost, right now, I prefer playing with football where, it would be nice to win, but as long as nobody on my team blew out a knee or broke a rib during the game, that's, we've all won. At this age, just not falling over as you run is a pretty good accomplishment. So, I'm looking forward to not having to really compete at that level. To be honest, it takes a toll. And, the best guys out there, the David Netowins and that, I think they, and the Jeff Stoutons and Kevin Martins, they have such a wonderful balance between them, that need to win and that love to play the game of curling, and I think that's what I'm lacking right now is I just want to play something, but I don't really need to play it at the top level. I just want to play. So I think come October, November, if I'm getting out once a week and playing hockey, or, I got some guys that I'll go out and play basketball with and get a reminder, that I'm not built for those sports, that'll be enough for me. I really think that will be, but, I don't know for sure, so we'll see.
A reminder that you're not built for those sports. You're not built for basketball or hockey?
There was a reason why I focused on curling.
Hey, at last year's Brier, there were Jeff's well-documented dust-ups with the officials, but your team seemed to be running on fumes by midweek. After being so close in the trials, did just the Brier event feel like a bit of a consolation event to you guys?
It was just, I think it was an indication that was a team that was on its last legs. Our team was always, and I think we had talked about this before, Dean, was that that team for the last couple of years was built around the trials, and we went there doing everything we could to win, but it was always going to be one of those things where afterwards we all knew that there was a good chance that the team in some form was going to change, whether it was, Gary or myself or, just Jeff looking to do something different. There was going to be a significant chance. So I think the Brier was one of those situations where, there was the underlying truth that the team was on its last leg was a little bit below the surface, and we went in there with a tremendous amount of confidence, but we didn't do the same things that we did at the trials. We weren't as focused, we weren't as well prepared, we weren't in as good a shape. It just wasn't the same. We tried to talk ourselves into it, but we just didn't have the same ambition that we had, and it's a long year. It's really, really tough to do, those kinds of events, more than once a year, for most guys. Some guys can do it, but, most guys, it's tough when you're balancing jobs and such. So, had we got comfortable with the ice and everything else, we would have been fine, but it was clear from the beginning that we didn't have a good handle on the ice as far as any of it, draw weight, throwing the same hit weights, and that as a result, Jeff starts struggling with it, where to put the broom, and he has a hard time reading, so he doesn't have a lot of confidence, and we just didn't have what it took at that point to work through those issues and really grind. You'd talk about guys that, like a Tiger Woods, who, no matter what the circumstances is, can just figure a way to grind out to the best, and you know what, as a team, I just don't think it was there that week. And had we, hooked up on the ice the way we did out in Halifax, I think we would have been fine and would have been in there at the end. But when we struggled a bit and that, we started to lack some confidence, I think there was a little lack of the same sense of team, and we just couldn't find a way to work it through. And so, I don't think it was necessarily a thing that it was a consolation. I think it was definitely a thing that we were tired as a team, individually and as a group, and it would have been nice to do better, and we tried our hardest, but we just didn't quite have it the way that we had it earlier in the year.
Hey, separate from your team's performance in Regina, you talk about the focus of your team over the last couple of years. Where do you see the Brier as an event in, say, 5 years? I mean, the focus is clearly shifting for teams, so where do you see the Brier ending up?
Well, I think it's going to be interesting because, the first thing that you see right now is that you see these massive switches and changes, in the year following the Olympics. And, so you're going to have sort of a consistency of teams from years to years building towards the Olympics. And I think that that's going to pay some real dividends to the Brier, to the tour and such, in that you're going to get some consistency in who you're going to see. So, the guys that are at the Brier this year, that team isn't going to be as likely to flip around, and I think that will really help interest level moving forward, so that when you look at it, you go, that we saw that young team from Saskatchewan last year, and they're back again, and it's the same guys, and you get that consistency. It's sort of like, people don't know necessarily who's playing on one team on the NHL anymore because they flip around so much, and does that really, that kind of is a detriment to them at times. I think that you'll see the opposite of that. You'll see some real continuity, and that'll help the Brier and the tour. And the Brier is still, it's an every year kind of deal. It's such a different event. The curling at the Olympic trials is so about the curling, and the Brier is still so much in addition to that. It's a party, it's an event, and so they're different. I think that there's certainly room for both of them, and I still think that, outside of maybe the Olympic years, the Brier is really going to be, the major focus for most teams. It's a way to get into the Olympic trials along with, I guess, the Players' Championship and stuff. And, the trials, I think, can really just help to continue to put the top events, the Briers, the Players' Championships, at a very high level of focus year in, year out going forward.
That's a good point about the players having to commit for 4 years, because, that might actually get to where players as performers become something that the game can market a little more than it's been able to in the past. So, that'll be one good thing out of the 4-year commitments that teams are making, among many others. That's Jon Mead on The Curling Show. Thanks for listening. Black Pudding's on the way.
Salt flat screaming, Jim beaming, no two grains of sand are alive. Sow the seed, reap the speed, angels wing on a Chinese kite, yeah!